Chosen one, if you are a woman living alone, this message is not random. There is a reason you clicked on this video. There is a reason you're here, right now, hearing these words, because deep down you've been asking questions no one else seems to understand. Why am I alone? Why does it feel like everyone else has someone but me? Why does my life look so different from what I imagined? And maybe, just maybe, you've started to wonder, is something wrong with me? Listen carefully. This is not an accident. This is not bad luck, and this is definitely not a punishment. There is something deeper happening in your life. Something spiritual, something intentional, something divine, because being alone does not mean being abandoned. But I know what it feels like. The silence in your home, the empty side of the bed, the moments when you wish someone was there to talk to laugh with, to lean on. I know the nights when your thoughts get loud, when the loneliness creeps in quietly, and you start questioning your worth, your timing, your future. You see others getting married. You see relationships forming. You see people building lives together, and you're standing there wondering, when is it my turn? And sometimes the world makes it worse. It tells you that something is missing. It tells you that a woman alone is incomplete. It whispers lies that your value is tied to having a man beside you. But what if I told you that what the world is saying is not what God is saying? What if everything you've been taught to believe about your situation is completely backwards? Because there is a message, hidden, powerful, and rarely spoken, about women who are living alone. A message that most people don't understand. A message that doesn't fit into society's expectations. And that message is not one of lack. It is a message of selection. Yes, selection. You are not alone because you were overlooked. You are not alone because you were forgotten. You are not alone because you are less than. You are alone because you were chosen. Chosen for something deeper than ordinary relationships. Chosen for a path that requires strength most people don't have. Chosen for a level of spiritual growth that cannot happen in distraction. But here's where it gets difficult. Because when you are chosen, it doesn't always feel like a blessing at first. It feels like isolation. It feels like confusion. It feels like waiting without answers. And that waiting can break you if you don't understand it. Because when you don't know why you're alone, your mind will create its own reasons, and those reasons are often painful. You start blaming yourself. You start comparing yourself. You start settling in your thoughts for things you would never accept in reality. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to shrink. But something inside you has always resisted that. Something inside you has always said, no, there has to be more than this. That feeling you have, that quiet voice telling you that your life has purpose. That is not your imagination. That is your spirit recognizing truth. Because the truth is, God does not isolate without purpose. He does not remove people from your life without intention. And He certainly does not leave you alone, without a reason that is far greater than what you can see right now. But here's the part that most people miss. Being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. One is a circumstance. The other is a condition of the heart. And many people who are surrounded by others are still deeply lonely. So your situation is not your disadvantage. In fact, it may be your preparation. Preparation for clarity. Preparation for strength. Preparation for a level of peace and self-understanding that most people never reach. Because when there is no one else around, you are forced to face yourself, your fears, your wounds, your doubts, your identity, and that process is not easy. But it is powerful, because the woman who learns who she is in solitude becomes unstoppable in every area of life. Still, I know there are moments when it doesn't feel empowering. There are moments when you question everything. Moments when you feel invisible. Moments when you wonder if God has forgotten about your desires, your dreams, your need for companionship. And that's where the real struggle begins. Not in being alone, but in not understanding why. Because when purpose is hidden, pain feels heavier. But what if your current season is not about lack? What if it's about alignment? What if God is protecting you from something you cannot yet see? What if He is shaping you into someone who cannot be placed in just any situation, with just any person? Because not everyone can walk the path you are on, and not everyone is meant to. That's why your journey feels different. That's why your timing feels delayed. That's why your life doesn't match what others expect. Because you were never meant to follow the crowd. You were meant to walk with purpose. And purpose often requires separation before it reveals itself. So instead of asking, "Why am I alone?" maybe the real question is, "What is God doing in this season of my life?" Because there is a message, a truth, a revelation. That changes everything once you understand it. A truth that will shift how you see yourself, how you see your situation, and how you see your future. And once you see it, you can never go back to thinking the same way again. What you are about to discover next will completely change how you see your situation. Being alone is not punishment, it is a divine setup. It doesn't feel like that at first. At first, it feels like silence that echoes too loudly. It feels like waking up and realizing there's no one to text, no one checking in, no one waiting for you. It feels like sitting in a room full of people and still feeling unseen. Emotional loneliness is a different kind of pain. It's not just about being physically alone. It's about feeling like no one truly understands you. Like your thoughts go deeper than the conversations around you. Like your heart carries things you don't even know how to explain. And sometimes you don't even tell anyone how you feel. Because you've learned that most people won't understand anyway. So you smile. You stay strong. You keep going. But inside there's a quiet question that keeps coming back. Why me? Why does it feel like I'm set apart? Why do I feel so disconnected from what everyone else is experiencing? Why does my life seem to be moving in a completely different direction? And here's where everything begins to shift. Because what you've been calling loneliness, God has been calling preparation. You see, there are seasons in life where God intentionally removes distractions. Not because He wants to hurt you, but because He wants to get your attention. And sometimes the only way to do that is through solitude. Because when everything else is stripped away, the noise, the relationships, the constant validation, you are finally left with what matters most. Your soul, your identity, your connection with Him. And that can feel uncomfortable. Because we're not taught how to sit with ourselves. We're taught to stay busy, to stay connected, to fill every empty space with something or someone. But God works differently. When He chooses someone for a deeper purpose, He often pulls them away from what is familiar, away from what is comfortable, away from what would keep them distracted. And that's where you are right now, not abandoned, not forgotten, but positioned in a place where growth becomes unavoidable, where healing becomes necessary, where clarity begins to form. Because there are things God needs to show you that you wouldn't be able to see if your life was filled with constant noise. There are parts of you that need to be healed, and that healing requires space. There are patterns that need to be broken, and those patterns often come through relationships that were never meant to last. So instead of allowing you to repeat cycles, God pauses everything, and that pause feels like isolation. But it's actually protection. Protection from settling, protection from distractions, protection from connections that would delay your purpose. Think about it. How many times have you almost given your heart to the wrong person? How many times have you felt something wasn't right, but you ignored it because you didn't want to be alone? God saw what you couldn't see. He knew what would hurt you. He knew what would drain you. He knew what would take you further away from who you are meant to become. So instead of letting you walk into something that would break you, he pulled you back. And yes, it feels lonely. But loneliness is not always loss. Sometimes it is redirection. Because the truth is, not everyone is built for shallow connections. Some people are called to something deeper, something more meaningful, something that requires a level of emotional and spiritual maturity that can only be developed in solitude. And that's why your journey feels different. You're not just waiting for someone. You're becoming someone. Someone who knows her worth. Someone who doesn't settle for less. Someone who understands herself on a level that most people never reach. But becoming that person takes time. It takes silence. It takes reflection. It takes moments where you have no choice but to face yourself. And that's not easy. There are days when you wish things were different. Days when you crave connection so deeply it almost hurts. Days when you wonder if this season will ever end. And in those moments, it's easy to fall into doubt. To think maybe you've been overlooked. Maybe you've been left behind. Maybe your story isn't going to unfold the way you hoped. But that's not the truth. The truth is your story is being written differently. Carefully. Intentionally. With a purpose that goes beyond what you can currently understand. Because not every season is meant to be shared. Some seasons are meant to be experienced alone, so that when you step into what's next, you step into it whole. Not broken, not dependent, not searching for someone else to complete you, but complete within yourself. And that changes everything. Because when you are whole, you don't chase, you don't beg, you don't settle. You choose, you discern, you recognize what aligns with your spirit and what doesn't. And that level of clarity can only come from a place of solitude. So instead of seeing your situation as something negative, start seeing it as something sacred. A sacred season where God is working on you in ways that no one else can see. A sacred season where your strength is being built. Your identity is being shaped. Your standards are being raised. Because where you are going requires a different version of you. And that version cannot be created in chaos. It is created in stillness, in quiet moments, in deep reflection, in conversations with God that no one else hears. So yes, you may feel alone, but you are not without purpose. You are not without direction, and you are definitely not without divine attention. Because God does his deepest work in the quietest seasons. But what most people don't understand is what God is actually doing behind the scenes. People will judge what they do not understand. And if you've been living alone as a woman, you've felt that judgment. Sometimes it's loud, questions, comments, opinions thrown at you without care. Why are you still single? Don't you feel lonely? A woman shouldn't be alone for too long. And sometimes it's silent. It's the looks, the assumptions, the way people talk around you, as if your life is missing something essential. They don't say it directly, but you can feel it. That quiet belief that something must be wrong, that you're incomplete, that you're somehow behind. And if you're not careful, those voices can start to become your own. You start questioning yourself. You start wondering if maybe they're right, if maybe you are missing out, if maybe you are falling behind, if maybe your life doesn't measure up. Because society has a script, a timeline, a set of expectations that everyone is supposed to follow. And for women, that pressure is even heavier. You're expected to settle down by a certain age, to build a relationship, to create a life that looks a certain way from the outside. And if you don't follow that path, people don't always understand. They label you. They question you. They try to fit you into a narrative that was never meant for you. But here's the truth most people won't say out loud. The majority of people are not living intentionally. They are living by default. Following what they've been taught. Repeating patterns they've seen. Making choices based on fear, pressure, or expectation. So when they see someone who doesn't follow that same pattern, it makes them uncomfortable. Because your life becomes a a reflection of the fact that there is another way to live. And not everyone is ready to face that. So instead of trying to understand you, they judge you. Not because you're wrong, but because your path is unfamiliar. And unfamiliar things often get misunderstood. But let me tell you something you need to hear. Being misunderstood does not mean you are misplaced. Feeling different does not mean you are doing life incorrectly. In fact, it might be the very sign that you are walking a path that requires courage, because it takes strength to stand alone in a world that constantly tells you not to. It takes strength to resist pressure, to not settle just because others expect you to not force connections just to fit into a timeline. That kind of strength is rare, and that's why not everyone will understand you. They don't see what you've been through. They don't feel what you feel. They don't hear the internal battles you fight when you choose peace over pressure. All they see is the surface. But your life is deeper than that. Your choices are deeper than that. And your journey is far more intentional than it appears. Still, the pressure can be overwhelming. There are moments when you feel like you have to explain yourself. Moments when you feel like you need to justify your life. Why you're still alone. Why you haven't settled. Why your story doesn't look like everyone else's. And that can be exhausting, because deep down, you know you shouldn't have to explain your peace. You know you shouldn't have to defend your growth. But the constant questioning can wear on you. It can make you feel isolated in a different way. Not just physically alone, but emotionally disconnected from the people around you. Like you're living in a different reality. Like you're seeing something others don't see, and in many ways you are. Because when you step outside of societal expectations, you begin to see life more clearly. You begin to realize how much of what people chase is driven by fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being judged, fear of not fitting in. And when fear is the foundation, the outcome is rarely fulfilling. So while others may rush into relationships to avoid loneliness, you are learning how to be whole within yourself. While others may follow timelines to meet expectations, you are learning how to move with purpose, and that difference matters, because it shapes the quality of your life. It determines the kind of relationships you will eventually allow into your space. It protects your peace, but it also sets you apart. And being set apart can feel lonely. It can feel like you don't fully belong anywhere, like you don't quite fit into the conversations, the lifestyles, the expectations around you. And that feeling can be heavy, because as humans, we naturally crave connection. We want to feel seen. We want to feel understood. We want to feel like we belong. But sometimes belonging doesn't come from blending in. Sometimes it comes from standing firm in who you are, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's misunderstood, even when it's questioned. Because the truth is, not everyone is meant to understand your journey. Not everyone is meant to walk the path you are walking. And that's okay. You are not here to live a life that makes sense to everyone else. You are here to live a life that aligns with your purpose. And purposey doesn't always look conventional. It doesn't always follow timelines. It doesn't always meet expectations. Sometimes it requires you to go against the current, to stand alone, to trust a direction that only you can feel. And that kind of trust is powerful, because it means you are not living for approval. You are living with intention, and that intention will lead you to a life that is not just full, but meaningful. So when people judge you, let them. When people question you, let them. Because their understanding is not a requirement for your growth. Their approval is not a condition for your purpose. You don't need to shrink your life to fit their expectations. You don't need to rush your journey to match their timeline. You don't need to explain what God is doing in your life when even you are still discovering it. Because there is something deeper happening here, something beyond societal expectations, something beyond cultural pressure, something beyond human understanding. And once you begin to see it, everything starts to make sense in a way that no one else can explain to you. And the truth is, your situation carries a deeper spiritual meaning. What if God is protecting you, not depriving you? What if the very thing you've been questioning is actually the thing that's been saving you? Because it's easy to look at your life and feel like something is missing. It's easy to compare your journey to others and think you've been delayed, overlooked, or denied something you deserve. But what if you're not being denied? What if you're being redirected? You see, not every connection is meant to last. Not every person who enters your life is meant to stay. And not every opportunity that looks good is actually good for you. But here's the challenge. We don't always see that in the moment. Sometimes what looks like love is actually a lesson. Sometimes what feels like connection is actually distraction. And sometimes what we desire the most is the very thing that could break us if we received it too soon. That's why God's protection doesn't always feel like protection. Sometimes it feels like rejection. Sometimes it feels like doors closing without explanation. Sometimes it feels like being left out, passed over, or forgotten. But there is a difference between being rejected and being redirected. Rejection says, "You're not good enough." Redirection says, "This is not right for you." And God will always choose redirection over destruction. Think about the times something didn't work out in your life. The relationship that almost happened, but didn't. The person you thought was the one, but things fell apart. The connection that seemed perfect at first, but slowly revealed its cracks. At the time, it may have hurt. It may have confused you. It may have left you wondering what went wrong. But now, if you look back honestly, you can probably see things you didn't notice before. Red flags you ignored. Feelings you tried to silence. Moments where something inside you whispered, "This isn't right." God saw all of that even when you didn't. He saw the outcome. He saw the pain it would bring. He saw how it would pull you away from who you are meant to become. So instead of letting you walk fully into it, He intervened. And yes, it felt like loss, but it was actually protection. Because not every relationship is meant to build you. Some are meant to distract you. Some are meant to drain you. Some are meant to delay you. And when you are chosen for something greater, you cannot afford to be tied to what is not aligned with your purpose. That's why your life feels so intentional. That's why certain things don't work out for you the way they do for others. Because you are not meant for just anything or just anyone. You are being prepared for something specific. Something that requires you to be whole, to be strong, to be deeply rooted in who you are and in your connection with God. And that kind of preparation takes time. It takes seasons of solitude. It takes moments of reflection. It takes experiences that shape your understanding, your boundaries, your standards. Because when the right opportunity comes, you won't be guessing. You won't be confused. You won't be trying to convince yourself. You will know. And that knowing comes from growth. Growth that happens when you are not distracted by the wrong things. Growth that happens when you are forced to depend on God instead of people. Because here's something powerful. When you don't have someone else to lean on, you learn how to lean on God in a deeper way. You learn how to trust His timing, even when it doesn't match your expectations. You learn how to find peace within yourself, instead of searching for it in someone else. And that kind of faith cannot be taught. It has to be built in the quiet moments, built in the waiting, built in the uncertainty. Because faith is not just believing when everything makes sense. Faith is trusting when nothing does. And right now you are in a season where your faith is being strengthened. Not broken, not ignored, but strengthened. Every time you choose patience over panic. Every time you choose peace over pressure. Every time you choose to trust God, even when you don't understand, you are becoming stronger. stronger in your identity, stronger in your discernment, stronger in your connection with Him, and that strength will carry you into the next season of your life. A season where you won't settle, a season where you won't ignore your intuition, a season where you won't compromise your peace for temporary comfort. Because you've learned too much, you've grown too much, you've seen what happens when things are not aligned, and now you are being positioned for something better. Not just better in appearance, but better in substance. Something real, something stable, something that aligns with who you are becoming, not who you used to be. But in order to receive that, you have to go through this season of being alone, this season of being refined, this season of being prepared, because what God has for you requires a version of you that is ready to recognize it, ready to receive it, ready to sustain it. And readiness is not built overnight. It is built through experiences like this, through moments where you feel like nothing is happening, but everything is actually shifting beneath the surface. So instead of seeing your situation as something lacking, start seeing it as something sacred, a sacred process of transformation, a sacred season of protection, a sacred moment in your life where God is working in ways you cannot yet fully see, but will one day understand. Because one day everything will make sense. Every delay, every closed door, every moment of loneliness, you will see how it all came together, not to hold you back, but to move you forward in the right direction. And when that moment comes, you won't regret the waiting. You will be grateful for it, because you will realize that God was not keeping something from you. He was keeping something for you, and what God is preparing for you next is greater than you imagine. You are not alone, even if it feels like it. Right now, in this very moment, you may be sitting in silence. You may be carrying thoughts you haven't shared with anyone. You may be wondering if anyone truly sees you, truly understands you, truly knows what you're going through. But God does. Every quiet tear you've held back, He sees it. Every question you've asked in the dark, He hears it. Every moment you felt forgotten, He was right there with you. You were never invisible to Him, and you were never walking this path alone. From the very beginning of this journey, there has been a purpose. Even when it didn't feel like it, even when it felt confusing, painful, or uncertain, every moment of loneliness, every season of waiting, every time something didn't work out the way you hoped, it was all shaping you, not to break you, but to build you, because you are not ordinary. You are not meant to live a life driven by pressure, fear, or expectations. You are chosen to walk a path that requires depth, chosen to grow in ways that most people avoid, chosen to discover your worth, not through someone else's validation, but through your connection with God. And that kind of journey is not easy, but it is powerful. Because look at you. You're still here, still standing, still searching for truth, for meaning, for purpose. That alone says something about your strength. There were moments that could have broken you. Moments where you could have settled for less. Moments where you could have given up on yourself, on your standards, on your faith. But you didn't. Something inside you kept going. Something inside you refused to accept a life that didn't feel right. That wasn't random. That was God guiding you, even when you didn't realize it. Because when you are chosen, there is a different kind of protection over your life. A protection that may not always feel comfortable, but is always working in your favor. So instead of looking at your life and seeing what's missing, start looking at it and recognizing what's being built. Your strength, your clarity, your independence, your ability to stand alone without losing yourself. These are not small things. These are foundations. Foundations for a life that is not just filled but fulfilled. Because when your life is built on truth, on self-awareness, on a deep connection with God, you don't just exist, you thrive. And that's where you're headed. not into a life of lack, but into a life of alignment, a life where what comes to you matches who you've become, a life where you don't have to question your worth, because you already know it, a life where you don't chase, because what is meant for you finds you. But until that moment comes, this season matters. This time in your life matters. Don't rush it. Don't resent it. Don't try to escape it just because it feels uncomfortable. Embrace it, because there is something sacred about becoming whole on your own. There is something powerful about learning how to love your own presence. There is something unshakable about a woman who has faced loneliness and turned it into strength. That woman cannot be easily broken. That woman cannot be easily messled. That woman walks with a quiet confidence that doesn't need validation from anyone else. And that woman is who you are becoming. So if you've been feeling different, if you've been feeling misunderstood, if you've been wondering why your life doesn't look like everyone else's, now you know. It's not because you're behind. It's because you're being prepared for something deeper, something real, something aligned with your purpose, not just your desires. And when it arrives, it will make sense why everything before it didn't work out. It will make sense why you had to walk alone for a while. It will make sense why God protected you even when you didn't understand it. Until then, keep trusting, keep growing, keep becoming, because your story is not incomplete. It's unfolding, and every chapter is leading you exactly where you are meant to be. If this message spoke to your heart, if you felt something shift inside you, don't ignore that. That feeling is there for a reason. Take a moment right now and comment, Amen, to declare that you trust God's plan for your life. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the messages that are meant to guide you in your journey. And share this video with someone who needs to hear this, because you are not the only one going through this season. There are others just like you searching, growing, waiting, and needing this reminder. And before you go, remember this. You are not alone in your waiting. You are not forgotten in your silence. You are not lost in your journey. You are being led step by step into a life that is already being prepared for you. And when the time is right, everything will come together in a way that only God could have planned. Hold on to that, because the same God who brought you this far will not leave your story unfinished.